If you check what's unfolding in Washington at this moment, it doesn't feel like routine politics anymore. It feels like an outright rebellion. For the first time during his presidency, Donald Trump didn't merely run into resistance. He faced a full-scale uprising. This broke less than 3 hours ago. The gavel fell in the Senate chamber, and the reverberation reached straight to the White House. The margin wasn't even tight. The United States Congress just intervened to block the president from starting an economic assault on Canada. Trump attempted to corner his neighbor to the north. He reached for the heaviest tool in his arsenal, a blanket 25% tariff on every single item crossing the border. He believed he held all the leverage. He expected Canada to buckle quickly. But Mark Carney never flinched. He didn't shout or post furious messages. He methodically took apart Trump's whole approach from within. Now the fallout is rippling outward. The White House appears rattled. Markets are lurching in every direction. And suddenly, people are raising a question that once seemed impossible. Is Donald Trump starting to lose command of his own party? Over the next 40 minutes, I'm going to walk you through precisely what shifted today. I'll reveal the hidden advantage Carney wielded, the Republicans who deserted Trump, and why, even if you live nowhere near the border, this Senate action just protected your own finances. Hold on tight. You're witnessing a real-time turning point in history. Let's jump right into the developments. You have to grasp how enormous today's event on Capitol Hill truly is. At 8:09 p.m. Eastern, the U.S. Senate approved a bipartisan measure. This procedural step basically removes the president's power to place national security-based tariffs on Canada unless Congress signs off. That's massive. It's the ultimate check in trade legislation. For years, Trump has leaned on Section 232, the national security provision, to act unilaterally on trade. He wakes up, decides he dislikes a trading partner, and imposes duties. No consultation with Congress, no input from experts. He simply acts. Last week, he tried it against Canada. He insisted on instant concessions involving the border, dairy, and energy. When Ottawa refused, Trump declared the 25% tariffs across the board: oil, vehicles, timber, food. They were scheduled to begin Monday, but today, Congress hit the kill switch, a veto-proof majority. That means Republicans joined Democrats to pass a law specifically protecting Canada from those measures. Consider what that implies. Republicans who normally stand with Trump on nearly everything walked to the Senate floor and sided with Democrats to defend Canada. Why? Because Mark Carney forced the issue, not through intimidation, but through cold facts. Word is spreading that over the past 72 hours, the Canadian Prime Minister's office contacted virtually every key governor and senator in the United States. There were no threats. They simply laid out the numbers. They demonstrated what happens to economies in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania if that border seizes up. American politicians grew alarmed. They saw Trump steering straight toward an economic crash, so they seized control. Trump is livid. His press secretary branded the vote an act of betrayal, but the statute is unambiguous. The tariffs are finished. And for the first time, Canada didn't merely endure a Trump offensive, they turned it back on him. You may be wondering whether this is genuinely significant. Politicians pass resolutions constantly. You need the evidence. You need to see why this represents a genuine rupture in the established order. First piece of evidence, the vote tally. Final count stood at 74-26. In today's polarized environment, you can barely get 74 senators to concur on the time of day. Yet 74 agreed Trump's trade conflict amounted to national self-harm. 25 Republicans defected. These weren't the typical anti-Trump figures. We're talking senators representing solidly conservative states, senators who rely on Trump's backing to stay in office. They reviewed polling back home. They studied fuel costs. They concluded that crossing Trump posed less danger than impoverishing their constituents. One Midwestern GOP senator was heard remarking as he exited the chamber, "I can't convince my voters to accept a recession just to prove a principle." That statement carries the weight of dread, not dread of Trump, but dread of economic reality. Second piece of evidence, the red state letter. It surfaced mere hours before the vote. A message addressed to the Senate Majority Leader, endorsed by the chief executives of 3 leading U.S. automakers plus 5 major energy firms. The wording was stark. No polished PR phrasing. They warned bluntly that if the Canada tariffs activated Monday, production lines across Michigan and Tennessee would halt inside 48 hours. They projected Midwest gasoline prices surging 40 cents per gallon virtually overnight. They stated plainly, this is not bargaining leverage. This is supply chain disintegration. Carney anticipated that letter. Insiders report his staff supplied critical figures that shaped it. He recognized American corporate leadership had reached its limit. He understood Trump's bravado thrives on television but crumbles under basic arithmetic. Third piece of evidence, the war room photograph. The picture is spreading rapidly online. Captured yesterday in Ottawa, it depicts Mark Carney seated with his trade team. The table is strewn with maps, not Canadian ones, but maps of American congressional districts. They weren't preparing to defend. They were pinpointing the precise U.S. districts most vulnerable to a trade conflict, districts Trump desperately needs for upcoming midterms. They ensured those lawmakers understood the precise consequences headed their way. This wasn't traditional negotiation. This was precision political combat. Canada arrived armed with accuracy, while Trump brandished blunt force. Cameras recorded Carney departing the session. A journalist asked whether he feared Trump's reaction. Carney kept moving, merely straightened his glasses, and replied, "The numbers favor us. I hope the president reviews his calculations." That is poise. That is someone certain he controls the stronger position. So why is this unfolding right now? Why is Donald Trump, the figure who reshaped the Republican Party around himself, suddenly incapable of corralling votes in his own chamber? Because he is losing mastery of the story. For years, Trump's greatest asset was his unpredictability. He labels it the madman approach. Convince others you're willing to destroy everything, and they'll surrender whatever you demand to preserve the pieces. It succeeded against Mexico. It achieved partial results with NATO. But it fails against Canada, and it especially fails against Mark Carney. Trump constructed his own snare. He escalates through threats, tariffs, border shutdowns, scrapping USMCA. Ordinarily, the opponent panics, rushes to Mar-a-Lago, offers symbolic concessions, and Trump proclaims triumph. This time, the response was quiet. When Trump floated the 25% tariff, Carney skipped Florida. He refused to plead. Instead, he published a retaliatory list of American goods Canada would block, including Kentucky bourbon and Texas electronics. He made the pain immediate for senators in those regions. Trump attempted to intensify. He appeared on television claiming Canada exploited the United States. He tried rallying supporters, but the base feels the strain. Inflation is climbing. Job security feels shaky. When Trump menaces a trade battle with Canada, the single largest purchaser of American exports, outpacing China, Japan, and Britain combined, voters perceive hazard, not power. Trump reacts instinctively. He spots an unfavorable story and launches sweeping policy that moves billions. The system has grown weary. Donors have grown weary. Today, the Senate demonstrated they too have grown weary. He overplayed his hand against an economy too deeply intertwined with America's. He attempted to sever his own limb to demonstrate toughness, and the rest of the system finally said enough. You're observing a president who has exhausted his options. He shouted, "Jump!" For the first time ever. The Senate answered, no. Now consider the opponent across the board, Mark Carney. If Trump represents flame, Carney represents ice. You must understand Carney's history to see why he prevails here. He isn't a classic lifelong politician. He's a central banker, former head of the Bank of Canada, later the Bank of England. He operates in probabilities, in systemic resilience. Few people comprehend the mechanics of the worldwide economy as thoroughly. When Trump erupts, Carney studies bond yields. His method diverges sharply from the usual playbook. Most leaders either placate Trump or counter with verbal attacks. Carney avoids both. He applies pressure points. He grasped a straightforward truth. America depends on Canada as heavily as Canada depends on America, perhaps more so in key industries. He refused to engage on ego terms. He focused on structures. He assembled an alliance. Rather than negotiating solely with the White House, he sidestepped it. He contacted governors directly. He reached CEOs. He spoke with labor leaders. Effectively, he communicated, "Your president is about to damage you. Here are the figures. Here is how to prevent it. Assist me and I assist you." That degree of strategic clarity caught Washington unprepared. They expect Canadian prime ministers who request politely. Carney arrived and described how the entire apparatus functions. He converts pressure into advantage. Each Trump tariff threat became evidence of American unreliability. He leveraged it to secure fresh agreements with Europe and Asia. He persuaded U.S. firms to shift operations northward for predictability. The core message is sovereignty. Carney presented this not as a commercial disagreement, but as safeguarding Canada's existence. That framing connects. Even Americans admire resolve. He plays for decades ahead while Trump chases the next headline. Today, the decade-long view prevailed. Step back. What does this truly mean for you? Whether you're in Ohio, Texas, California, Toronto, or Vancouver, this Senate decision preserved your purchasing power. Plain fact. Had those tariffs launched Monday, costs across the board would have risen. Construction lumber up 20%, gasoline higher, groceries more expensive. Canada supplies more energy to the United States than any other source. Disrupt that and you feel it immediately at the pump. Beyond prices, this reveals a profound change in global dynamics. For 70 years, America stood as the central power, the irreplaceable nation. Yet when an American president behaves aggressively and Congress must restrain him, the facade cracks. It signals that international confidence in U.S. leadership has eroded. Markets perhaps retain trust, but the White House does not. Canada demonstrated you can refuse America and prevail. That precedent is potent. If Canada succeeds, why shouldn't Europe? Why not China? Trump sought to project dominance. Instead, he revealed fragility. He proved his authority has limits. This marks a rebalancing. The United States remains formidable, yet no longer the sole decisive voice. Mark Carney just claimed a prominent place at the table. It affects you because uncertainty grows. The old pattern, America dictates terms, others comply, has fractured. Now everything becomes bargaining, and Canada showed it negotiates fiercely. We stand in unfamiliar territory. What follows tomorrow? Normally, leaders de-escalate. Joint statements, handshakes, declarations that democracy functioned. Trump avoids de-escalation and rejects defeat. Three paths appear possible in the coming days. Scenario A, escalation through other channels, most probable. Tariffs are blocked, so he deploys alternative pressure, intensified border screening, prolonged safety checks on trucks, flight restrictions. He can still disrupt cross-border commerce without directly defying the Senate. Anticipate delays at crossings, likely beginning tomorrow morning. Scenario B, courtroom battle. Trump might challenge Congress legally, issue an executive order asserting overriding emergency authority. The dispute heads to the Supreme Court, lingers for months, generates pervasive uncertainty. Businesses and markets would despise the instability. Scenario C, reframing, least probable yet shrewdest. Trump could act as though tariffs were never his true goal. He could assert he extracted major concessions, rendering tariffs unnecessary. It's fiction, but it preserves dignity. His current online activity, however, shows no pivot. He's intensifying, attacking defecting senators, promising primaries, threatening funding cuts to their states. A cornered political figure becomes unpredictable. Carney recognizes the danger. That's why Canadian forces remain on alert. That's why Ottawa's trade operations continue full intensity. They understand the initial clash has concluded, but the larger turbulence persists. Prepare for continued instability. This did not conclude the dispute. It merely finished the opening phase. The world shifted today, not through dramatic spectacle, but through a single vote. Congress established a boundary. They prioritized economic health over party allegiance. Mark Carney showed that victory doesn't require being the strongest superpower, only the most strategic. Trump is wounded, yet far from finished. The coming weeks will challenge American institutions in unprecedented ways. I want your perspective. Do you believe Congress acted correctly by safeguarding the economy, or did they undermine the president? Do you view Carney as defending Canada effectively or provoking Trump toward even riskier steps? Share your thoughts in the comments. This discussion is only beginning. If you want updates when border traffic slows tomorrow, subscribe now. The regular news cycle can't keep pace. You need to stay right here.